Our next panel discusses collaborations, and it's chaired by Valentina Fois, Marketing Director at Zealous. So please welcome Valentina and our panel to the stage.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to start with a little introduction to let you understand how I'm going to run this panel. So I'm going just briefly introduce myself. I'm going to introduce the talk and the panelists, and then we're going to open a debate between us, and I'm going to leave plenty of time for all of you to ask questions. So yes, I am the marketing director of Zealous, but I'm also a curator and a digital strategist. Had my own gallery in London for nearly 3 years, and at the time I had the opportunity to collaborate with charities, commercial galleries, museum, magazine, hundreds of artists. The reason why I'm stressing and mentioning the word collaboration is because that's the focus of our panel. So hopefully during this hour we're going to stress and explore this subject and what means to collaborate and how can we maximize opportunities and create brilliant projects. So we meet today have 3 professionals that they'll be sharing with you their individual experience and thoughts on collaboration. I got Donna Walker, which is founder and creative director of Traces. Donna is also a freelance furniture and special designer. Then I got Dr. Greg B Davies, that you already hear just before us, and is head of Behavioural-Quant Finance for Barclays. And then I have Vanessa Butz, which is a managing director of Interchange. Interchange is a co-working space for creative startups in the heart of Camden. Thank you. So I just briefly introduce you, but if you don't mind, just to take the time and maybe introduce your project, like 5 minutes each or something, so we can give the audience a better idea of what your project is, what your company is, and then I'm just going to ask you a few questions.
Sure, I guess I'll start. Hello, everyone. My name's Vanessa, and I'm the MD at Interchange. We are a very new co-working space across 3 buildings, 2 of which have launched 3 months ago. And we have a lot of creatives, freelancers, entrepreneurs, startups, and even some corporate innovation teams. So it's very diverse. 84,000 square foot in total, and that gives about 1,500 people at capacity. So it's quite large. And we're very much right on top of the Camden market. So but 2 of our buildings have market stalls underneath them, and that gives us a really interesting, eclectic environment to be in. We also connect the shops and the traders at events with entrepreneurs, and we hold workshops every day almost around collaboration, connections, and in fact our large building that's coming live in April is probably one of the reasons I fell in love with the project. It's shaped. I've never seen a building that is shaped to connect people and to facilitate serendipity. That's really what it can do, because it has an open 4-story atrium, and you can almost cycle from the road all the way to an office around the atrium. So we're very excited. It's opening in April, and you're of course all welcome to come have a look. Oh, and maybe briefly, before Interchange, I ran and helped build Factory in Berlin. We had SoundCloud's HQ, 250 people from SoundCloud, Twitter, Uber, Mozilla, lots of other startups, and it was very tech startup focused, whereas Interchange is going to be more connecting also the creative world with startups. And I believe, and I'm really passionate about, the fact that I think you learn most in diverse environments. So if you want to disrupt banking, don't surround yourself with bankers, but do an opera, or be inspired by diversity.
Thank you, Vanessa.
So my name's Donna Walker, and I'm creative director and co-founder of a company called Traces. We're an immersive exhibition and events company. So essentially what we do is we take over abandoned buildings, currently only within London, but we'd like to expand. So any opportunities, come speak to me. But essentially we take over abandoned buildings and we do a lot of actual research into that building's history. maybe who worked there, who lived there, any major events that might have occurred there. And then based on this research, we take the building back to a specific point in its history. So we've done a Victorian pub, we've done a 1930s department store that was owned by Selfridges, we've done a junk shop on Portobello Market. And what we then do is we commission and work with between 60 and 80 different artists from all different disciplines. That could be like a smell artist, it could be a food designer, it could be a jewelry designer, a fine artist, an installation artist, like literally all the realms you can imagine. And we ask them to produce pieces of work for the space. The public are then invited to come in a kind of a through the keyhole kind of way. You know, that like Grossman program, like who lives in a house like this? So the public can come in and they're allowed to rummage through the different rooms, look at all the kind of personal ephemera they might find, all the pieces to try and put together what that story is. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you.
I won't go on too much because you've just heard about me from one side. Just to say that was, of course, in essence, a one-off project. But as a team in Barclays that is really tasked with trying to bridge the gap between academia and the commercial world, we are always collaborating in all sorts of ways with academics, sharing data, looking for ways to bring new ideas into what is often a relatively staid industry. Also in sound and music, we have this monthly evening called the Creative Data Club, which is about getting speakers who utilize data, stuff that is often conceived of as well as being very technical, very dull, very boring, and using that in creating music, in creating artworks, in making collaborations happen, etc. So I'm completely with you on the diversification point. You know, we live in a world where everything has become, where knowledge has been become incredibly siloed, and everyone gets labeled and pigeonholed. You are that, you are that, and the richness of things comes when you start to bridge those walls, I think.
Thank you. Well, you know, let's start with this diversity, because I think that's something that we seems to share, and I actually agree that diversity is really important, especially when you speak about the creative sector, but not only the creative sector. But diversity comes with challenges, obviously, because if you be asked to work with someone that has a totally different background from you, say maybe, you know, it's come from another country, is speaking a language, or is used to do other things, it might likes other stuff, it gets complicated then to understand each other sometimes. So what's your thoughts on that, and have you had any experience on you having had to work with so many people from so many different backgrounds that you actually found it difficult to forge a collaboration with them?
I'll start. I actually think it's the opposite. As long as you approach it with an open mind, what we found, we have around 200 people working in our first building that's open now, and they're from all sorts of different countries. We have a lot of English people, but lots of international people working there as well. And for us, we've already seen results with cross-collaboration between the companies and the teams. Not only have two health tech companies started working together, which is fantastic, they just met because they were sat in a similar space. But if you go to a space like ours with an open mind, and if you're the right fit for the sort of culture of where I guess we would be now, with everything's digital, but the real partnerships and real work still gets done offline. And that's why it's so important. I think never before have we been at a point where proximity and the network and the people you bump into on a daily basis are so important to your business. And I look at it from a, say, entrepreneurial perspective. How can we help people that are working in our space improve their businesses and take their businesses to the next level? And I think a big part of that is being surrounded by a diverse mix of different people, because you look at things differently. One of my favorite examples is a small startup that worked with us in Berlin, and the founder bumped into Eric, who's the CTO of SoundCloud, and they had a 2-minute conversation. 6 months later, he came to me and was talking to me about this conversation, how he randomly bumped into him, and he was like, I really think that 2-minute conversation saved me 6 months and maybe 100 grand in development time. So it's like tiny micro interactions. Now I like to call them interchanges that can make a huge difference.
Can I come in on that?
Sure.
I agree with you, except that you have two caveats in there. You said the right fit and the right environment. So certainly you get the right people together and diversification can spark. Working inside a commercial organization where people aren't necessarily as prepared to do that, then it can be difficult. And I think the biggest problem is communication, because even if people are talking about exactly the same thing, they use different languages. And I don't mean, French and English. I mean different vocabulary to express the same things. And you have to be constantly willing to let go of your language and try to understand what the other person's actually saying. And I think a lot of people find that very difficult.
I think that's the really nice thing about specifically the creative industry, though. This idea that I don't think in any other industry that I've ever come across that this sense of diversity of different people from different backgrounds, different things, will actually work when they do come together. Like, it's a really beautiful thing to see. The people in the creative industries, I find from personal experience, are not so shaded or like protective of their ideas, that they're really happy to talk to other people and to share things and for like these small interchanges to happen, And I think that's a really exciting thing. And our project is completely all about that. One of the kind of starting points for launching the company Traces was to kind of show people what the creative industries are all about. I'm sure if any of you here, or all of you here, studied some kind of art subject, you'll have come across that that kind of attitude in life of, oh, you've done an art degree. Nobody really understands what that means, and no one understands how big the creative realm is. And so we really wanted to put that on display and to bring all these little elements of different people together. So from people who are like musicians, to creative writers, to graphic designers, to internet web developers, to tech kids who are putting things into furniture and making things interactive, and then all the kind of more obvious creative subjects. So when people turn up and they're in this environment, we can kind of say to them, okay, so this is the creative industries. Everything around you, everything that you see is designed or made by someone. And it's a beautiful industry to be a part of because it's very eclectic, and there are a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. And I think it's fantastic when we can all come together.
And just to add on that last point, maybe briefly, I think you're completely right, and you're also right. But what I think summarizes it is knowledge. So actually, educating people on what that means and how to bring the right people together, because you can try it and really fail, of course, and you can, like for example, events are really important, like this one,
yeah.
And that passes on knowledge to people that might have not understood or, experienced what the creative industries are in that sense.
That's exactly what I wanted to jump on, because I hear a lot of collaboration between creatives. It doesn't matter what kind of creatives, from photographer, you mentioned designer, a bit of everything. And my fear is like, what about who doesn't recognize himself as a creatives? Are they left out of this conversation? To start with, I would say that I personally believe, that's just my opinion, that we all are creatives in some ways. But there was an interesting panel this morning where the host was saying that often you've been told, she say, I can't sing, I cannot act, I cannot drawing. So does that mean I'm not creative? Because that's how often school, want to label us. Okay, you someone working with mathematics, you're going to be, a banker or whatever. So how do we make sure that actually our work and the collaboration we can forge really open up creativity for everybody and bring creativity out of those people that they might not recognize themselves as creatives?
Can I come in on that? Because I think this is a big problem. I've got a 4-year-old son, and there is no 4-year-old child in the entire world that is not creative, right? They pick up paper, they sing to themselves, they draw, they do whatever. And at some point, and I think this is a deep cultural issue in some ways, at some point in our childhood, I guess as we get to sort of 8, 9, 10, we're kind of shuffled into creative and non-creative piles. And then certain things are seen as being non-creative, and people don't feel that they're allowed to be creative. And so I think the solution here, and I'm talking in a very abstract generalization, because I don't know what the specific practical solution is, but we have to be able to give people the license to feel that they're allowed to be creative. Now, if you're in the creative pile, that's fine. You almost feel it's your obligation to be creative. But as people in finance, I mean, you mentioned mathematics. I mean, true mathematicians are incredibly creative people. They're right at the forefront. But the rest of us who work with mathematics sort of feel that we're not allowed to be creative. We're not allowed to call ourselves creative. And we're in that pile, and we can just sort of sit and watch the creative people from a distance. And I think that's a big problem. And trying to break that down is about somehow giving people permission.
Permission and also access. So when we have sometimes we have corporates or larger or even government representatives that want to look at the startup scene and see it as like a theater, but what we then try and do is connect them in and actually make it accessible, but also make it...
And how do you do that? Could you give us an example of how you will forge a collaboration to bring them in and give them a real access to...
So not only do we connect them with startups when it's relevant to what they're doing, so sometimes even we've been able to connect basically a startup with a larger company and they get a project out of it, or they get to distribute their product through that larger corporation. But also just showing them our spaces where these people work, and then actually just getting them to have a quick conversation with the founder and to tell them about the products, which can then lead on to something larger.
And I guess you will organize lots of networking events as well.
Exactly, speed dating where they get to know each other quickly, and it's open to everyone. So most of our events are open to the public as well, which is interesting.
You don't need to be a member.
You don't need to be a member.
Okay, that's
for most of them.
interesting.
Some are members only, but most of them are open to everyone, and we're just actually in the process of relaunching a new website, which will be much easier for everyone to see all of our events. You can sign up on interchange.io. And one thing we're also doing is we're working with local charities to actually contribute to what it means when you're 4 years old or 12 years old, to actually get kids in, not only trying to teach them how to code or design or to experience, and be in contact with the creative industry, but actually to show them that entrepreneurship is a real viable career path. Because I had it when I was at university. I studied engineering, actually, which is, one could also argue, not very creative. I would say it's extremely creative. You get pushed into 3 funnels: banking, law, or management consultancy at a lot of universities. Still, unfortunately. And being an entrepreneur, doing your own company, doing your own projects, like going into abandoned buildings, that's amazing. But at some point, your creativity gets drained, unfortunately, in society still. I think it's a big problem, and I agree with you. And so outreach and going to the universities, going to the schools, and getting them into spaces like ours or to conferences like this is, I think, really, really essential. And people who then get in contact with it once can fall in love with it.
I think the key is education, without a shadow of a doubt. And that's something that I think that our current government really need to address, because I think my friend's an art teacher and there's some petition going on online. I don't pretend to know an awful lot about it, but from what I understand, the government currently are trying to kind of cut the creative industries in school, trying to minimize the time. But that just seems like the most crazy thing in the world to me. I'm not saying that everyone in school needs to become an artist, but what I am saying is that creativity is essential in every single role. You know, like you're talking about mathematicians being incredibly creative. I mean, they are. I mean, Escher, okay, he's a fine art as well, but also an amazing mathematician. But what about all these scientists that come through? What about all these tech people that come through? All the people that come through to make our life and our society and our existence better? They don't develop those ideas without a spark of creativity that gives them the idea to start with. So if we just drum that out in schools, then we're killing off the next generation, you know? It's great to have fantastic mathematicians. It's great to have fantastic scientists. It's great to have all these really intelligent people, but we need to harness their creativity also.
Well, I agree. You see, for me, when I think about collaboration and creativity, I think that the lesson creativity teach you is to be agile, because, you know, like, it doesn't matter what job you're going to do in life. You could work in a bank, or you could be a painter. Sometimes you will need to face yourself with lots of issues and problems. And if you agile and somehow you're creative, then you can move and adjust things and make things better. So I think it's up to go with your point. I think is that it should be part of the curriculum, and much more is needed, and much more it needs to be done to make that happen. But I think you were about to say something just before I went there. So
this is wild speculation, but I wonder if there isn't also a problem of, in a sense, the professionalization of creativity. So, not everyone expects to be a premier footballer, but then lots of people are quite happy to play football badly because they enjoy it. And that seems not to be quite so much the case in creative arts. You become a consumer of the professional's creativity. I go and watch the ballet or watch the concert, etc. And this is one of the reasons that singing in a choir is great, because you can do things kind of badly and still have fun. But it almost feels like that participation is not rewarded in creativity in the same way as it is in sports, because somehow you've got to do things well or not at all. Don't know, wild thought.
Let's use it as a hobby. I think there's plenty of painters and hobby singers.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of hobbyists, but also that's the cool thing about the creative world is open to what's the word? Like I could think something is great, and you could think something is rubbish.
Yeah.
So even if you think what you're making is completely rubbish, somebody might really love it. and I think the other thing is time, isn't it? Like finding the time to really put into art. If you've got a full-time job and everything else, it can be quite challenging.
But I also think that things are changing massively and especially with the internet, and keep changing. The fact that now you have those people so-called prosumers, which is producer and consumer mixed together, prosumer. And there are people that not my people that my hobby might be photography. All of a sudden, I can go online, I can do courses online, I can teach myself skills and tips, and then I can get myself some really good kit, because there are more competition, so the price of lens and software and things go down, and then I can really craft that skills, and that makes me believe almost I am a professional photographer, I want to get involved. And then you see lots of people having their own blogs. That's all part of being prosumers. And I personally think that the challenge for, as a marketer, that's speaking as a marketer, I think that the big challenge for all the companies and brands is realize that people are tired to have a passive role. They want to be an active role, and we need to make them able to have this active role, which is whether they're make them to be our brand ambassador or ask them to write for our blogs. At Zealous, perhaps what we wanted to do, we're running a blog, so every day we post our ideas and thoughts and impression of the day, so we sum up the day for whoever could not make it and be with us in person. And we were left with the choice, shall we do this or shall we ask someone else to do it? And we decided to invite a media team of volunteers. So we have 5 lovely people that are doing that for us. And the reason why we want them to do that is because they would be able to offer their insight, their personal thoughts, and that is something that is unique and is based on the real experience and not, from someone working with a company. Oh, this is great, yeah, blah blah blah. It's good to hear from other people what they really think. So I think that's for me is the next challenge: how we really open up collaboration with everybody, not just between partners, sponsors, or partner with a charity, but with the public, with the whole public. I don't know how you feel about it. If you're within your project, if you have a thought about what can I do next to really open up a large debate with all the public and not just with few single individuals, but with the community. Have you ever thought about it? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, okay.
It's a big one, sorry.
It's a big question, but I think kind of what you're saying, I suppose we try to do that. We try to make the public, the audience that come to our events. This is going to sound a bit pretentious now, because we're kind of a cross between a theatrical experience and an art exhibition, but we don't have any performers. We say that the objects are the performers within the space, and they tell the stories. But then we also perceive the audience to be the performers, because depending how they act within the space, it kind of says a lot to the other people around them, what they can do and what they read into it. And we also do a kind of, in the run-up to the event, this online, what we call a clue campaign, where we leave a lot of physical clues around the place where we're working, but also online. And we ask the public to comment on these things and to send things back. And we offer little prizes if people manage to find so many clues and can tell us something about it. So we try to encourage the interaction in that way. But it is something that we question quite a lot as a company, like how can we make them public even more involved rather than just people that come and see something? How do we make them people who come and do something and take part? So yeah, maybe next year I'll have a better answer for you.
I thought it was quite a good answer. We also do the same thing, but we're obviously open to the public for all of our events, but then the next step for us is obviously trying to get the public to join as members, to actually work from our space. But what I actually wanted to mention, which I think is the next step to what you said, and very fascinating to me, is this whole concept of shared economies, or the sharing economy. Now with Uber, Airbnb, every commodity you own can be shared.
Co-working space like yours, so
of course,
sometimes
you
you can
traditionally
come
get your own office.
Yeah.
Well, you'd have very long leases and it's very expensive. Now you can just work from almost any cafe on the road. And if you want something a little bit more professionalized, you come join a co-working space like ours. And there's, of course, lots of different things. But maybe, I don't know, maybe co-working will end up going so far as to people opening their flats to let people work from there.
Yeah,
It's
I was
what
about to
Airbnb
say
does.
that, yes.
That's, for me, very, very interesting. And you get less protective over what you own and more open to sharing it with other people.
Yeah, I suppose just a reflection on the commercial world. So the democratization, I guess, of creativity is something that is of great concern to large companies. I mean, obviously, entrepreneurship and the act of creating business is itself commercial. But if you're in a large corporate, then it becomes a question about innovation. How do you bring new ideas into an organization? And that's of big concern to companies like Barclays. How do you tap into the universal creativity of your employees for new ideas, decentralize, bring it in from the bottom up? And there are a number of initiatives that we've had that have been trying to do that. So prizes inside the organization for people who come up with ideas that get driven into the business. So award schemes. It's providing that license and that permission to go and think about something a little bit out of the box.
They call it intrapreneurship now, don't they?
Intrapreneurship, yeah. I mean, we had an intrapreneurship fund that was a ring-fenced pot of money that was available for people who had ideas that could be produced within the business with a social end to them, which we tapped into to produce a behavioral framework for social impact and philanthropy to try and encourage those things, build a practical framework to do it. But that was one of many projects that this fund basically said to all employees, if you've got an idea, write it down, present
to the table.
Bring it in, and if it's any good, you will get to carry it through, you'll get given some money to go and make it real. And those sort of things, I think, are incredibly powerful, not just for the people who do it, but for the knock-on effect on general morale and people's feeling that actually they have a license to step slightly outside of the narrow constraints of their day job.
Thank you. Something else I wanted to ask also, because we obviously, we all aware and we stress a lot how important and powerful are collaboration, but they're not always very easy to forge and to establish. So, perhaps with my job, I had to forge lots of collaboration with maybe partners, sponsorship, brands, and sometimes you think this is an amazing idea, we're going to have so much fun. Then, midway to the project, it's just like some problem arise and it's get really hard to work because they might have a different agenda from, different agenda from yours, different objective. So I'd be interested to know if you ever had some experience that weren't very pleasant. You don't need to go too much in details, like sharing who was that. But what I'm keen to hear is the lesson you learn, and what advice can you share with us today?
Okay, so the worst experience I've ever had within what we do was actually with a carpenter. Mainly, we rely quite heavily on tradespeople for what we do. Because we're taking over old buildings, we have to make sure that they're health and safety okay for public to come in. We also need to build a lot of environments to put everything in, and so on and so forth. And sometimes the creative industries can be really amazing, where people want to offer to give you their time for less money than it would actually physically cost, which is really fantastic, and it's a really nice thing, and it's also a really rubbish thing when it's you doing it. But yeah, it's just the way that we kind of all work. And when you're working on a small budget, you don't really have money to pay people an awful lot. So a lot of it is kind of done on a promise basis. And we had
in kind,
exactly. And so we had a very good carpenter who fell in love with the idea of the project. It's like, I really want to work on it with you. This would be like a really cool project. I'm really behind it. And we were funded by kind of the Arts Council and grants, and we get some private sponsorship and whatnot. So obviously there's a stage where we have to budget everything in, and we have negotiations about how much this person wants. And it's a really, really good price. We're really happy.
Everything seems fantastic.
Everything seems fantastic. But we didn't sign anything because we're all really trusting. And 3 weeks before we're about to open the doors, when the carpenter's meant to be on site building these quite complicated window boxes, etc., he demands more money, at which point we have no more money because we've spent the entire budget on the production because it's all been very clearly done. And it was the most stressful 3 weeks of my life because we needed him.
How did you overcome that? Did you did you get really upset? Did you just...
In private, I got really, really upset and really, really stressed. And my boyfriend will tell you that he had a very difficult time because I took most of it out on him. But the only way to overcome it was kind of with negotiations and trying to reasonably talk with this person about where we're at and what's kind of at stake, and that he wouldn't just be ruining an opportunity for my company, but like the 80 artists that we're all planning on being part of it. And also I had to pay him some money out of my own pocket, so that was really shit. But there's a lesson to be learned there, and that is always that, whatever you agree with people, no matter how lovely they are, or if you've got a friendship or anything with them, just get it in writing, because it's just not worth it. Or if the deal seems too good to be true, then give them more money to start with. Agree it to make sure that they're going to be happy to finish the project.
I think this is a great advice, because I would imagine, especially for maybe young artists, just start the career, they're not really aware of what is the rules of the business environment and how the market works. And personally, that happened to me, a similar story. So you see, I think that's a great advice. Thank you.
I have maybe not a personal story, but a general advice on anyone starting a business or creative freelancers. Really, some of the best ideas and products don't fail because of the product or the team or the company, but because they lack basic knowledge and skills. So what we offer, for example, we have KPMG's high-tech growth team in our space, and they will give you free accounting services. But you need to know about it. They give you free accounting and taxes if you're a small company or a creative. So but people don't know, and we try and do our best to market it, but of course it's hard to reach everyone to tell them about this. So you can literally come to our space, meet them there, talk to them for however long. They'll spend a lot of time on you, and they're absolutely lovely, and they give you free templates and a whole suite of products to use to do your accounting for you. Because it's basics, but it's also really hard if you've never done that. If you come from a creative industry, you've not learned how to do a balance sheet or do your taxes, and it's all a learning experience, and people spend a lot of time on it if you don't have the right help. And the right help is out there, and it's for free. You just need to be told and you know, collect that. There's a lot of amazing free support and help.
And you don't want to mess about with money when you open, when you launch your own business, because especially at the beginning, the budgets are tight. So
Yeah, that's really good advice,
yeah,
and I want their details after.
Yeah. That's a good one.
I was going to say it's how you deal with disappointment along the way is incredibly important. So you can have this great idea, you can get excited, you can get other people excited, but sometimes just, I think I used the phrase fertile ground for the Open Eye Cry opera. It was the right thing at the right time, and a year before or a year after, it may well not have happened. And that is true for a lot of projects. It could be an entrepreneurial project, it could be a creative project, whatever. Sometimes it's just not the right time to get everyone excited about it. And if you get too emotionally attached to these ideas and you're not prepared to put them down and let them just, let them sort of mull themselves over for a year or two, maybe they'll come back, maybe they won't. But if you get, I think, too disappointed by setbacks along the way, you'll find yourself having fewer new ideas, and you'll have the sunk cost bias. You'll be throwing good energy after bad, as it were. And I think this is a personality trait of successful entrepreneurs. Is most of them aren't necessarily more intelligent or risk-taking or any of these things, but they do seem to deal with setbacks extremely well. They see things in the big picture. They're able to put things down, pick them up again, move on without getting too devastated when they get some no's along the way.
I just want to check what time is it, because I want to make sure that we do have time for question. So we can keep going. Okay. Well, so to get back again, what's the perfect formula, if we want to call it like that, to have a partnership which is successful and working for your personal experience? What would it be your step-to-step advice?
I like the saying, there's no loyalty in business, just mutual self-interest. So if both parties have a self-interest in the project, it's always going to be successful, unless something goes wrong, which of course always can happen.
But is there not a risk of one of the other just only mind their own business rather than, rather than really push the collaboration, the partnership forward?
That's what I mean with really, if you have to understand the definition of mutual self-interest. So you want that project to be the best possible because it will help your own cause, whatever that cause may be, if it's social, if it's economical, if it's entrepreneurial. I think that's the most co-founder or the most startups that fail is because of co-founder issues. I had a startup once. We tried 8 months, and I realized I can't work with this person. It's just not the right fit. And that's, I think you have to, there's obviously a lot of factors involved in it, but from an entrepreneur perspective, if you have the right people in it and you're really behind that project, you're going to do your best to make it happen. And then it's external factors that could cause you to fail.
I agree with that. In fact, that would be my advice as well to anyone who is looking for a sponsor or partners or simply someone to do a project together, is always do some research on that person or the brand or that whatever, and really try to understand, do they fit in with my project? Do we share the same objective or belief? Because first of all, if you approach them and they don't share any of your objective, they will say no, and then you can spare yourself the disappointment of being told no. But second of all, they might even say yes because the project is really appealing to them, but then it might not go well because at the end of the day, the interest is not the same. What you want to get out from the project is not the same. So always do lots of research. That would be mine.
I think mutual self-interest is important, but so is simply mutual interest, mutual passion, finding common ground. And it's not a recipe, but I think if you want to collaborate with people from outside of your field, the most crucial thing you can do is talk to lots and lots of people. And some things will spark, and some people will spark, and some won't. But if you hide in a corner and don't share your ideas, you're never going to find the people it sparks with.
Well, personally, within our own company, in terms of co-founders, I am a co-founder, there's two of us, and what I found really important was, we both shared the same vision, we both wanted the same outcome, but we both had different skill sets, so which complement each other. So that I think that's really important, because if we had exactly the same skill sets, we'd probably struggle at 50% of what we needed to do.
It's an important aspect of diversity.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I'd say that. And then in terms of like commercial partners, we haven't had an awful lot. And as Valentina knows, we're actually just in the middle. We've just got a marketing thing happening where we're trying to get more corporate sponsors. But we're also looking, a big part of us is looking at history, how we can tell stories about history to people. So for us, partnering with someone like the National Trust or the English Heritage makes like complete and utter sense, because they need more people to visit their buildings and we need more buildings to show off. So that's kind of how we're trying to go forward. Watch this space. They might say no.
Good luck with that then. Well, I would like to open up to the audience to see if they have any question, and if not, I have another question, so we'll see. So please don't be shy and do your question.
Hi, sorry, I don't remember your name, but the lady in the middle. Hi, I was just, your business sounds awesome, and I really like the idea of being able to bring loads of creative people together, and especially in abandoned buildings, which is, something that really appeals to me. But I'm just interested to know, do you have funding from the government, or how do you monetize a situation like that, or at least be able to fund it, so that are you paying the people who are making the products as well? Sort of, what is the situation with that?
Okay, so we are a non-for-profit company, and we're very small. There's two co-founders, and then we have two other people that have been working with us so far as the core kind of membership of Traces. And we're funded by the Arts Council, so that's grant-based. And then we do crowdfunding, we raise sponsorship that way. And we also have a couple of private partners who donate money in order to have their logo put on it and be associated with a cool brand kind of thing. So that's kind of where all the money comes from currently. We don't charge the artists anything to take part, and we don't charge the public to come to the event at the moment, although that might need readdressing. But in terms of artists that take part in it, anyone who makes bespoke work for it, we have a certain amount of money that we set aside to commission people. So yes, some artists will be paid to take part. Other artists will just be exhibiting their current work if it happens to fit into it. So we give them a free platform. And then everything at the exhibition is for sale. So we take a small commission, currently 25% of whatever that is. And that's one way of kind of trying to generate money to come back into the business to make us more self-preserving. Sustainable, that's the word, yeah. But at the point we're at now, actually, we're readdressing all this, and that's the other thing about kind of trying to be this idealistic non-for-profit company, because I came from a furniture and lighting background, so I make my own furniture and my own lights, and I've done all the kind of big trade shows, London Design Festival, Milan, and they all cost, like, as an independent designer, they cost you so much money. And I started working with a theatre company, actually, called Punch Drunk, who do immersive theatre. And I was just like blown away by it. And I was like, this is how I want my work to be seen. Like, I don't want my stuff in a little booth somewhere. I want it like in an environment. I want it to tell a story. I want people to get excited when they come. And that's kind of where the idea came from. So I was very idealistic that I didn't want artists and designers to have to pay to be part of this. I wanted to be a platform for people. So anyway, moving forward, the point of this was that we're now looking at the possibility of charging the public to actually come a small fee, maybe like between £3 and £5, just to put back into the company to try and become more self-sustainable and to keep it free for the artists and just the commission. So it's quite an interesting time, I think, because we've done 3 quite large-scale projects now, and now we're at the point where we need to grow. So it's how do we do that and not rely on funding so much.
How long have you been running for?
Since 2012, yeah.
Okay.
So we've done 1 a year.
Yeah. And also, what's your next one, and how do I come to it?
So we keep all of our events. I hope this doesn't sound pretentious. I always wonder about this, but we're the secret exhibition. So we actually release clues about our next event. So you can join the mailing list or follow our Twitter account. If you go to traces-london.co.uk, all the information will be there, and we send out digital clues to people. Plus, if you happen by any chance to live in the area, you might see some around or some live performances, something happening in the run-up to it. But it will be this year, so...
If you can't tell us about your future one, can you tell us about a previous one?
Yeah, sure. So the last one that we did was in Peckham last year, and it was set in an old arcade in Peckham Rye on the High Street. The whole arcade was empty apart from the front two shops, and it had been for like 10 years. Nobody was there. And they were trying to rent it, and we just happened to be walking past one day, and when we're doing kind of site recce's looking for unusual places. And we thought, oh, well, this is quite cool, it could be something interesting. We see a lot of buildings like this, by the way, as well, and they don't all make it into the shortlist, because the next stage then is that we have to do a little bit of preliminary research in archives to just find out exactly if there is anything interesting, if there's a good story that we can tell. And we were really lucky because it was actually the arcade to an old department store. Peckham back in the 1930s was the Golden Mile, so it was like the Oxford Street of the South. So it was very, very affluent, a lot of massive department stores. And there was one in particular called Holdren's. And this, where we were, actually used to be their kind of arcade walk-through area. So they would have all their display units for their different departments. And in 1936, it was purchased by Selfridge, as in Selfridge's Selfridge, as one of his external stores, and redesigned. And they ran a competition. They had 3 architects to do new drawings for this building. And they opened it up to the shoppers and said, pick one. And Selfridge himself designed some stairs. And in 1936, just after the death of the king, it was reopened, and it was like this massive event. So we took it back to that point, and we
So you walk down the road, see an abandoned building, and you're like, this looks cool. And then what? How do you find the owners or the history about it?
Well, the history is the first thing before we contact the owners. We always look at the history, because there's no point making that connection with the owner to be like, can we use your building? They go, yeah, and then we go, oh, it sounds a bit rubbish. So we go local archives, yeah, always local
libraries.
archives.
But that's also tied up with what you say when, just go out, make that connection, create that opportunity for yourself, that collaboration, because no one is going to come and knock at your door and be like, hey, let's do this together.
What's your average, how many people on average visit your spaces?
So the last event ran for 2 weeks, and we had 9,500 people actually attend. Double that registered for free tickets, but didn't all come.
We should talk after. We have a
You see, collaboration.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I love what you guys do, and I think so the company that funds Interchange owns 14 acres of land in all of the Camden markets. So we have the most amazing heritage in Camden. It was the gateway to the north. So the building that we got our name from was actually called Interchange, and because it was an interchange, the canal boats came in, the railways came in, they stored the goods above and exported with horse and carriages from the stables market, stables market. And I'm sure we have empty buildings, so we can talk.
Yeah, cool.
Somewhere.
Do we have another question? Yes, please.
Good afternoon. I would, the lady in the middle, sorry.
I think you should tell them your name.
Oh, I'm Donna. Hi.
I would like to know
Just can you keep your mic?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
I'm a bit nervous to talk in the microphone. I would like to know how you select your artist. Do you work with a young graduate, or is only very popular artists? Because I think it's an amazing idea as a young graduate to kind of find the first exhibition space, and I think your idea is, your company is amazing, and I would like to know how you select your artists. Is it based in being an artist for a couple of years, or do you work with a young graduate as well?
Yeah, so we're really varied. We've exhibited different levels of artists. The way that we select them, some of it is done personally. Like we visit all the kind of, well, I say all, as many as we can of the kind of graduate shows in London and all the design festival, and we're quite active in visiting exhibitions and anything that catches our eye. We take a card, we have a database, we put it in, We name whether we think like, oh, this looks like it's a bit 70s, this looks like it's a bit 40s or whatever, so that when we got the next project coming up, if I search 1940s, it'll give me a list of people that potentially could match. We also then put out calls for artists and designers. So if we have specific briefs or commissions, then we use the Arts Council website. We're going to be using Zealous this year. So if you're already a member, then you're in a good place. And that's basically how we do it. So some of it's open call and some of it's actually chosen. And we do have on our website an apply email address. So if any artists visit it and they're just like, this sounds cool and I want to take part, you can drop us an email with your portfolio and we'll add you to that database. And if your work happens to fall into the category that we're doing that time, then we'll just be in touch.
Do you use the spaces for any performance while you're doing it?
See, do you want to do your opera now, hey?
No. I'm thinking of musicians and other forms of.
I mean, we have music there. We have we use sound artists that create soundscapes and whatnot for the exhibition, or sometimes they record. We had a radio in the last one in the staff room, and so we had an artist and actors to create like a 1930s radio with broadcasts and music and all this. But we've never had up until now anybody live in the spaces. I think that was maybe me being a bit awkward because I didn't want to compete with Punch Drunk, all right? Like, these guys, like, they corner the market in immersive theatre already, and there's people like Yumi Bum Bum Trade and Dream Think Speak, or I think you've had you this week as well. And what these guys do is amazing, and we're looking at it in a different way as, like, artists and designers work and how we can sell it. But all that being said now, where I've got to where I'm at, we're starting to think about, okay, how can we actually have live performance in the space, or this idea of pop-ups, pop-up kitchens and things, they're really popular. If it fits into the space in some way, like it has to fit the narrative, we're not going to just put things in that don't make sense. Like we're not going to host a meal just to try and make some money. I mean, if the venue happened to be a kitchen or a canteen or had those facilities, then great, let's use it as that. But yeah, and I think storytellers would be a nice way to go forward as well, just to get that history across a bit more. So if you had any suggestions and musically in mind, I'd be happy to talk about them, definitely.
Okay. Oh, other two questions. All right, nice. Please.
Sorry. So a couple of things that might be related. So when the issue of conflict came up around collaboration, it went to quite a negative place, unfortunately. But perhaps before it goes there, there's this lovely phrase, creative abrasion, where actually disagreement can be a really useful part of the creative process. So if any of you had any reflections on that. And then my second thought, particularly for Vanessa, the importance of having the right people. And if you could just explain that a bit further, what kind of characteristics, what counts as the right kind of person for you?
Sure. Should I just start on the second one? I think it's maybe a bit easier. We don't have a formalized application process like members clubs like Soho House or the people where they have a committee and they select the right people, but we still are selective in the type of companies that we want. We want companies that will open themselves up, come to our events, participate and show up and actually collaborate with exactly the topic of this discussion. We don't want companies that will just work in our space in a tiny corner like as if it was an office on any other road. Then they should go down and take a normal office because it probably would suit them better. We want companies that can really benefit from what we provide. And that's, in our opinion, added value of community, networking, and support services like KPMG's accounting, taxes that I mentioned, or we've just partnered with F6S, which is a European platform for startups where they have over $1 million in free discounts and deals across things such as design templates or MailChimp or Trello or Slack, products that companies, most startups use, and you can just pick and choose. So you don't need to use all of them, you use whichever. And we want people to really make the most out of that. And then that's where we see ourselves as being successful. If we can help, I see Interchange and I see what we did at Factory in Berlin, and what I'm really passionate about is creating frameworks for other people's success. So how can we be the wheel in the background while you take your business to the next level? And if we can play a part in that, then that's amazing, and we're super happy. So we really look for companies that will not only thrive in collaborating with other companies in our space, but will become successful, like potential unicorns, potential companies that are on the brink of maybe raising more funding, and we can help them because we have a large network of investors, or we can connect them with potential partners who'd actually maybe buy their products and distribute them online. So in that sense, it's really important for us to get companies that or have members join who will make use of that. So that's really important. And on the first point, I'll also add quickly, I love the idea of creative destruction, or yeah, exactly. So you destroy something to build it up again. In some industries, I think, or even in the arts. I mean, I don't know enough about art, but I think it's really interesting how some artists will build something and just to destroy it again, and that's part of the process.
Just on the creative abrasion point, I think it's extremely valuable, but I think it requires some of that diversification of skill sets that you said earlier. So when I was creating the Open Outcry with Alexis, it was his idea, but it couldn't have worked if we weren't both working together. And there were a lot of moments of tension, shall we say. But I think the reason it worked is there was quite a clear dividing line between stuff that was on his side of the fence and stuff that was on my side of the fence. And in the middle, there's always that line there. But if two people are too similar, trying to pursue the same vision, I think there the abrasion becomes more destructive than creative.
Also, I would like to say that, for my opinion, at least, is that there is not such a thing like a bad collaboration, because that collaboration might not work in that instance, but you can always learn something from that. So you will learn that next time you need to be, like in Donna's case, a little bit more careful and maybe, make them sign something, or you better do your research better and understand with who is your right fit, your right match. So I think as long as you take a step back and you be honest with yourself and put yourself also, you challenge yourself and say, did it not work because it's their fault, or might be also my fault? I think that's something you can benefit from that bad collaboration, if we want to call it bad. And we're going to take the last question because I've just been being told that we're running out of time, but please.
I'll make it quick.
No, yeah, take your time.
I work for a music education charity upstairs, actually. For those of you who aren't familiar with Rich Mix, there's about 20 arts organisations, mainly publicly funded, based here, and we're one of them. And we actually share our office with another music education charity which goes and does work in prisons with offenders. I'm particularly interested in the idea of collaboration and the use of space, the clever use of space. And something that I think my sector needs to do better at is creating spaces like these incubators. That I really like the idea of Interchange, and about figuring how that could work for publicly funded organisations such as mine, because often our sector is in a lot of competition with each other, because that pot of government money is so small and getting smaller. It's really important that we find something unique to sell to people who want to buy into what we're offering. But yeah, it's becoming increasingly harder in an era of budget cuts, and at a time where the arts is gaining less support by the government in schools, etc. So yeah, it's really interesting hearing about how well it works for the entrepreneur side of creativity, but actually for the arts that are specifically public funded, it's becoming increasingly harder, and I think we need to get better at generating new ideas for how that can work. So I'm actually taking away quite a few good new ideas from this, so thank you for sharing.
I'm glad this is happening.
And I'll just add to that, I think it's definitely true, and it's a real shame that there's less and less government funding for the arts, but that doesn't mean that sort of to be negative about it. I actually think it could actually create an opportunity for you to maybe learn something from the way other industries do it, cross collaboration and all, by going after. So I had an amazing meeting this morning with the guy who started a company called Goldfinger Factory. And they're really interesting. They're a social enterprise. They reminded me a little bit of Donna, but they create furniture or upcycle furniture with underprivileged people from the community around where their factory is. And they then sell it they sometimes get one's commissions, but they also sell it, and they also do workshops where they teach people how to build things with their hands. And I'm basically gonna try, and we're currently initial talks, but I want him to come into Interchange and do a maker lab where anyone can go and build things out of wood and metal and electric circuitry and put stuff together. And I think that's a really, but anyway, that's off topic. He has government funding, but also public sector. He has corporate funding, and he gets sponsors in. And so actually more and more of his funding, or the way he keeps his business sustainable, is through non-government funding. And he is a registered social enterprise. So there's lots of, well, social entrepreneurship's not new, but I think it's more and more, an option, and getting better and easier to do. There's also a co-working space called Impact Hub that just have social entrepreneurs, which if you haven't heard about it.
Based in Brixton, yes, I've been working with them, and they're fantastic. But
They're
the
really
problem
good.
with public funding is that there is lots of bureaucracy. So you can't just say, like, someone might come to you and be like, oh, I want to be, funding your project, and sometimes you have to say no because there are lots of political implication. And that is, but that's unfortunately is totally another discussion. We could be here for hours speaking how we should challenge that model. And so much could be done and so much should be done. Hopefully things will change with time.
Can I just add one thing? My colleague here in the audience is going to put a pile of cards on the reception desk like right now. And that's essentially a day where any one of you, if you grab a card, can come work from Interchange for free. So I'd love you all to come check it out. If you just bring your laptop and you can work from there.
Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
today and doing this, and thank you all so much to be here today. Thanks.
Thank you.